This is Matthew Brenner. Today is February 9th, 2017.
The opening bell here at the NYSE and the NASDAQ, looking for some opening prints as we do expect the Dow to crack 20K for the first time in its 120-year history, and it is done.
Well, look, we were on when it happened. Our grandchildren will remember. Hey, those guys were on. We were on. Dow.
When it hits out 20,000, we were on television. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
Like first bit of the moon. We were there.
Yeah, right. I'm sure it's equated to that. Yeah.
20,030 for the Dow. First time in history. Interestingly, guys, Dow's had 78 calendar years up, 43 calendar years down. Best year ever, 1915, down, up 81%. Worst year, 1931.
It's at the time of most complacency where there actually is the most risks. What's changed since 2008 and 2009? Anything? Because when Donald Trump was running for president very recently, before he was elected, the presidential elect, our new president of the free world, he warned of something very specific: a massive, enormous, gigantic bubble.
Now look, we have the worst revival of an economy since the Great Depression. And believe me, we're in a bubble right now. And the only thing that looks good is the stock market. But if you raise interest rates even a little bit, that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble.
Now we got to really be smart because we don't have money anymore. You know, we're a poor nation. We're a debtor nation. And we could be on a bubble, and that bubble could crash, and it's not going to be a pretty picture.
But I saw this coming, and I've been talking about a bubble. I think you sort of alluded to it, but I've been talking about a bubble. We are right now in a big, fat, ugly bubble.
He repeated it again and again. He said it's getting bigger, it's becoming more outlandish, and it's going to collapse. He's even been selling his stocks. Donald Trump, the master tactician, the master marketer who just won the U.S. election against all odds, was telling you, America, and Americans specifically, we're going and are going to pay the piper. Because the Federal Reserve has just been kicking that can down the road. Now, in 2008, 2009, at the height of the crisis, George W. Bush declared an emergency in the United States of America. But what few people know is that we're still in that state of emergency. The liquidity of the financial system, every single global financial institution going down, warning us, Congress, of martial law in the streets. So what's changed? Let's think about that for a moment. Nothing. Not a gosh darn thing has changed. But Christopher, the economy is getting better. Is it? Or his credit? You see, all they've done is liquefied the system, this phony, erroneous system that makes up the Federal Reserve printing money out of thin air, creating a dollar from nothing, and then the banks lending that dollar 10 times out to other people and businesses. It was founded and created and started from nothing, and then lending it again, creating a multi-quadrillion derivatives market. And if you don't know what a quadrillion is, because it's tough to fathom. These are the CDOs, the CMOs, all these sexy exotic instruments that have blown up hedge funds and pretty much into the world in 2008 and 2009. A quadrillion equals $1,000 trillion. So they've created more liquidity. They've liquefied the system with credit. Why? That's not a sign of the economy getting better. That's just lubing up the system to keep you spending. So you take on more debt. Credit card debt, household and personal debt, by the way, is soon to eclipse the levels we saw pre-crash in 2008 and 2009. People are taking out more credit again. They didn't even learn their original lesson, because that's what the banks want. They're laughing all the way to the bank. So they've liquefied the system. We're still in a state of emergency. They've created even more credit in the market. It's creating a much larger bubble than what we had before. The Dow is freaking approaching 20,000. For crying out loud. But what's changed? Nothing. Except the risks have increased, and we're at an all-time high of complacency. That should worry you. People taking out second mortgages, again, people taking out HELOCs, people being issued new credit cards, buying things they can't afford to impress people they don't even like. Thank you, George Carlin. How does this end? It ends worse than what we just saw. 2008, 2009, because we hadn't had a crisis like that since the Great Depression, they could liquefy the system. They could inject it with TARP and multi-trillions of dollars created from nothing to keep things going, to keep you drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak. But in the next round, since the Fed is now backed against a corner, it has fired that last shot out of its gun, has no room to run but to freeze your assets. I've talked about this incessantly, the war on cash. Do you know if you go to a bank right now, and I have friends that have done this, they've gone to a bank and have tried to withdraw over $10,000 of their own cash. Like, hey, can I withdraw my own money? You know what the bank has said? No. Sign this here. And why do you want your own money? Or they've told my friends, we don't have it. Go try it for yourself. Go to your bank right now and try to withdraw over $10,000 from a major financial institution. 9 out of 10 times, you'll be put on the radar. They can seize the assets, and they simply don't have it at the institution itself because it's all digital. It's all funny money. It's all 0 and 1s. It's not backed by anything. A commodity, gold, silver, wheat, oil, corn. It's a figment of the imagination of the illusory system that makes up these credit markets today. So many risks. The digital risk of a digital bank run, a seizure of assets, and a freeze on all digital currencies and forms of money. What is money? Well, it's just an idea, especially when it's backed by nothing since having gone off the gold standard. Something Trump does know all too well and is very keen on is the greatest risk. And the intellectuals that you'll speak with, the educators, those involved in geopolitics will tell you war is the greatest risk. This new nationalism, they call it, because America's first, is only creating more risks geopolitically. And this, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, whatever. The risks have only increased. This is what we've seen with the war on fake news, what we've seen with this idea that Russia erroneously hacked the U.S. election, even though if you study any of it, you know it's a complete and utter lie. A recent attempted coup of Donald Trump's administration by accusing him of participating in golden showers in Moscow. The death of numerous diplomats recently around and across the globe. Again, what's coming is a freeze of assets, a deliquification of this system. Worse than what we saw before. Again, FDIC insurance can't even cover its existing liabilities. It's an upside-down pyramid scheme. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, a lot of these pensions that are government run, it's upside down. And it's going to be flipped on its head. And who gets screwed? You. This isn't about fear-mongering, folks. It's about education. And it really does come from a place of love, because I don't want to see people hurt. Take it from a guy who worked for one of the major Wall Street firms in 2008 and 2009 and witnessed it firsthand, and became an activist today who's now on camera speaking to you right now. We can't prevent some of these geopolitical events from happening. We can only understand the risks. And that's why through the entire time that I've been doing this, nearly a decade, I've recommended you diversify that risk. How? Precious metals, gold, silver. I've typically recommended, when I was in the business, I recommended my clients hold anywhere from 10 to 15%, roughly, dependent on your time horizon, your objectives, your investment strategy, age, etc. Please consult a financial advisor. But again, education is key. And so instead of being accused of just fear-mongering, I'm going to give you guys the tools today from our partner Swiss America. All you have to do is click the link below. Download a free investor kit. Educate yourself on how to protect you and your family with precious metals, gold and silver, to protect against these risks, and a liquid asset freeze, which turns into illiquidity in the next crisis, in the next round. And God only knows how bad it actually will be. Click the link below right now. Download that report. At the very least, educate yourself with some free information. It's free. And I know these people. These are God-fearing, good Christian men and women, the type of people that I do business with and you want to do business with. Click that link right now. Where does this lead? How does this unfold? We look around us, we see this mass consumerism, we see even more complacency, we see even more debt, we see even more risks. Inflation. Those of you with pensions, those of you dependent on Social Security in the next crisis, because the Fed's going to have to print even more at that point, is going to create inflation, and it's going to destroy the value of that dollar that you once had. We've seen this. I actually have a bill, a Zimbabwe note worth $100 trillion. But people forget their history. Every major civilization, its financial and monetary system has collapsed. And we're going on a couple hundred years here in the United States of America, and we're already insolvent. The national debt has doubled under the administration of Barack Obama. And the clock is ticking. What will you do? How will you diversify yourself from those risks? I have friends and family that buried their gold during confiscation, during the war, during World War II. You're ignorant to think that these things can't happen again. Again, when there's mass complacency is when there are the greatest risks. And it's been almost a decade since the last major collapse. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Do it today, now.
Now, I know that Mr. Dent, Harry Dent of harrydent.com, again, is a really smart fellow. I'm not going to get into his whole background, his degrees, and his best-selling books, and all the work he's done at Bain Capital, and you name it. And his best-selling book, The Demographic Cliff, which has accurately predicted, that we have these downturns. My question to him is, can we turn this around? What does he make of what Trump's doing? What does he make of the moves he's making? But first off, since you've been holding for 5 minutes, listen to me rant, sir. Happy New Year. Hadn't had you on since the year changed over. You've been hearing me rant. I mean, the Chinese are openly saying they're going to come into America. They're going to teach us how to censor the press. That's in the Wall Street Journal. They report this with a straight face, like, oh, thank you, Chinese communist murderers. It's like a Twilight Zone episode. As you've reported, we're in much better stead than they are. The world's acting like they're the leader. So now that Trump's president, just a cornucopia of ideas, what is your global approximation of the state of the planet right now?
Well, number one, this is what it looked like back in the late 80s. Japan was the up-and-comer. Everybody thought they were going to surpass the United States and take over the world. And we said, no, Japan's going to have the greatest crash in history for the next decade. And the U.S. and Europe were going to do better than ever in the 1990s. So we're looking at demographics. We're looking at something economists don't understand. And we have the same thing with China today. China workforce is the only emerging country in the world that already has a declining workforce, and it declines even faster about 8 years from now, and they end up looking more like Japan. So China's near the top of its game. China's also overinvested, overexpanded more than any country in history by a mile. They've got so many empty condos and houses and office buildings and malls and railways and everything. China has the most extreme debt rise in the last decade. China is getting ready to blow. China's not going to be telling anybody what to do. They're going to be cleaning up their mess next decade. And by the time they do, their demographics are going to be failing even faster. So
in fact, there's the headline: the world's most populous country, China, is turning gray.
Yeah. I mean, this was the case for Japan back then.
And they're having a brain drain, too, aren't they?
Yeah. What's that?
A brain drain.
Yeah, I mean, well, and people are the most affluent, richest people are leaving the country and or getting their cash out as fast as possible. They don't trust their top-down government. They don't trust that, this bubble. They've got the most expensive real estate in the world by far. Hong Kong makes Sydney, Australia, and London and San Francisco look cheap. So they've got a giant, big, bad, fat, ugly bubble, as Trump says. And it's the biggest bubble I've seen in history. This book, The Sale of a Lifetime, my new book that looks at every bubble in history, looks at all the bubbles around the world. They all look alike. They all grow exponentially. They all have a kind of an orgasmic final.
And by the way, Trump agrees with you on real estate. He says it's overvalued. And he's saying, no more subsidies. They're saying that's horrible. Isn't this what we need?
No, the last thing we need, all of this quantitative easing and all these subsidies and tax-favored things like real estate, all they've done is create a bigger bubble that would have occurred anyway in this, what I call this fall bubble boom season on our 80-year long-term model for the economy.
Sure. So what do you make of $2 trillion out of the stock market? What do you make of that? $2 trillion out of the stock market.
I think I was thinking it was going to peak late last year until Trump came along. He beat the polls and won, and then he beat the markets who said he would be bad for the markets instead of good. The market's gone straight up ever since. This, to me, is that final orgasmic rally in the third stock bubble. Now, we've had 3 stock bubbles in a row. This has never happened in history because of so much stimulus from the government. Every time a bubble bursts, instead of restructuring the debt and getting real and cutting costs and doing the type of things normal businesses and even governments in the past do, they just throw money in the economy and create more bubbles. A bunch of money comes in the economy. It's going to go chase real estate and stocks again. And now we have a bigger stock bubble by far than ever, larger real estate bubbles in many cities and extreme around the world, especially in places like China, London, and Australia. And these bubbles are going to burst. That's all bubbles do. And they burst twice as fast as they build. That's one of the principles in this book. The second thing is when they crash, half the crash will come in the first 3 months. When the smart money finally realizes this bubble's over because they're playing it with leverage, they get out really quick. And we saw this in China last year. Their second stock bubble peaked and went down 45% in 3 months. The 1929 bubble did that.
And by the way, I mean, to your credit, you did predict a lot on the show, 6 months, a year out. Watch, China's the one to watch. They're the big bubble. And then some people are even saying, Dent somehow caused this. No, it was, they wouldn't let stocks fall.
Exactly. No, well, the Chinese government's been buying their own stock market ever since. And
they will execute you in China if you criticize the stock market.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's right. Yeah, you're in trouble. So they're doing everything to prevent it, yet their market's going sideways now for almost a year. That's called a dead cat bounce, which means you've got another bubble burst coming in China. So sometime this year, a couple things are going to happen. One is first, more likely or sooner, Italy has a huge debt crisis. It's close to default. Deutsche Bank is flaming out, as well as other Italian banks. Germany has the worst demographics in the world, like Japan I saw in the 1990s ahead of time. So we're going to have a blow up in Germany and Southern Europe. Second thing, at some point, and it may take longer because the Chinese do have so much power of their economy, the China bubble is going to blow, and that's going to be the death knell. But I tell you something between now and then, Trump's got a big problem that he doesn't see. He says he's going to grow the economy 4% by cutting taxes and regulations. He doesn't understand a couple things. Demographics are terrible. Our workforce is going to be negative growth, slightly negative growth for decades to come, and more so in the next several years. And the only reason jobs have been growing is we've been hiring back the people we laid off in 2008 and 9 in the Great Recession. We haven't been growing the workforce. Businesses haven't been investing in new capacity. Baby boomers have been retiring. That makes less and less labor force participation. So a lot of these people that left, and you can see in this chart, aren't coming back. In fact, we've gone from 67% when the baby boomers started to retire in this black line you can see. We're at 62.5 now. This says by 2024, we're going to go to 58%. We're going to lose another 4.5% of our workforce. How do you create growth in a shrinking workforce? Number two, another chart I have shows productivity. That's the only other way to grow.
All right, let me stop you, Mr. Dent, and I want you to harrydent.com. People can find your best-selling books there. And we'll talk about those too when we come back from break and take some calls that cover the waterfront. I want your comment on all these. But look, you didn't believe, or some people didn't believe Trump could win. He's beat a lot of odds. Innovation as I said earlier, could change the paradigm. We're in a very advanced civilization now. I agree with you historically on the trends. You've been proven right. I hope you're wrong about this. All I'm saying is, if we have super innovation, a lot of technologies released, a lot of construction that's being done on highways and roads, if he can hustle a lot of factories to be built and jobs be created, there's a major hustle factor in humans. Even if the demographics aren't good, if you get those that are working even harder and producing more, couldn't that have an escape velocity out of this trend?
Well, no, we're already back at full employment, which means we've hired back all those people that wanted jobs. A lot of people left and won't come back. Why? Because a lot of two-earning couples, when their kids get out of college, they say the wife stops working or works part-time.
So the problem is the baby boomers deserve to take it easy. The problem is if they do, we're going to implode.
We're going to implode. So with zero productivity, old people don't get more productive. They get less productive. We're going to see productivity. It's now near zero. It's going to go even lower into 2024 before it starts to turn around again. So if we got workforce shrinking in the next several years and productivity going from near zero, the lowest since the early 80s when the Bob Hope generation was retiring rapidly, how are you going to create 4% growth? And companies aren't going to invest in new capacity because there is no demand.
Sure. So the Republicans green-lighted bringing in immigrants who we need. The Democrats only want to bring people that want to be on welfare, the worst type. So now we have even bigger disaster. How do we get immigrants that we need?
Well, that's what Australia and Canada do. We should be studying them. They identify the skills they need. They make you meet requirements.
And then we brain drain everybody. I don't care what color you are, just as long as you want to work hard.
We send the smart ones back home.
Yeah.
And we let the lowest quality immigrants just come over the border. So we have the worst immigration policy, even though we attract more than most countries, and that's good for demographics, but it's not as good as attracting. When I speak in Australia, a third of the people there are Asian, and those immigrants have higher than average educations and incomes, not lower. So they really are a plus for the country.
Sure, they're getting the brain drain of the best.
Yes, and again, here, we attract people to our universities more than any country around the world, and then we have quotas and push most of them back to the countries. I read an article where a guy was kicked out of Microsoft, sent back to China, and within 2 years, he started $100 million business.
No, exactly, because it's an admitted globalist plan to not let America be dominant. We only take on people that basically are low-skilled because it's all about a control system. It's incredible.
Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, or share this video. This is Matthew Brenner.